Hello there. I am Angie Callen, host of No More Mondays, coming at you with your little tiny dose of inspiration in the form of Midweek Momentum. And if you have not listened to my episode with Kent Julian on Monday, I highly recommend you do so because it is chock full of wisdom. And Kent is just a very lovable guy. But what I want to bring to this conversation and really challenge all of you with today is this idea of having a vision for your life, right? There is this, and one of the things Kent and I talked about is this idea that tends to be a space between knowing what we want, but actually taking action to get it. And so most of you aren't lacking a vision. You're lacking either the courage and or the follow through to work yourself towards it. And a few weeks ago, we talked about like self-limiting beliefs and the belief systems that we carry with us through life. And that is one reason we can really disrupt and live in that gap between what I want and what I'm willing to do to get it, is because we assume we can't have it because of subconscious things that are kind of holding us back. And what I want you to know is that if you are in that gap, Kent calls it moving from dreaming to doing. If you are in that gap, it is not a problem with your character. It is a problem with the overall system, both the external system and the internal system, right? The internal system is what we talked about a few weeks ago with that whole idea of the belief systems holding us back from feeling that we're allowed to or have permission to or even can put ourselves in a better position. But the external system that is society has conditioned us to default. And what's really amazing is we are living in a time and place, regardless of what is happening at a macro level, regardless of the challenges of the economy, we live in a time and place where we have more choice and more options than we ever have. And so now we can start living by design on a daily basis. This is like not a one-time decision that you then go coast. It is ultimately a vision that you have, and you start closing the gap between that dreaming and the doing in order to get yourself closer to something that looks like you want it to. Now, let's go into a couple of things I think are really important. Money tends to be a giant holdup here because one, we assume that we're never going to make what we had if we make a change. And two, a lot of us aren't willing to make change in order to get change. And if you want something to change, things are going to have to change. So golden handcuffs are real, and they're expensive ways in order to keep yourself held back because you sit back and assume you're never going to be able to have the quality of life that you have somewhere else. Well, what's quality of life? Is it the 3-car garage and expensive things, or is it living in a place that you want, for example? Things that you're going to have to get honest with yourself if you want to start looking at your system as something that is not necessarily intentionally designed, but was handed to you either by your family who raised you, your family that you have built, and or the society that we live in. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about in Scary Good is this idea of design over default. And I believe we all deserve to have the life that we want to have. And if we do not, it is in some ways a choice that we make, or we consciously don't make, because that's also a choice, to stay where we are for whatever reason. Safety, golden handcuffs, assumptions that we can't, all of those things. However, if you are willing to do the work, the exploration, if you are willing to say the thing out loud that you really want, and you have patience and intention for those things to come, it almost always does. Everything almost always works out if we let it, right? It might not look like you planned. Success can look very differently than you wanted to. And so that vision that you were dreaming about may end up looking differently than you specifically envisioned, but doesn't mean you didn't get it, because you were willing to do some level of work, close that gap between dreaming and doing, and come out of it a more satisfied, impactful human who gets to live intentionally. And that's the thing. So many of us accept the mediocrity trap. And here's the thing, everybody, it is expensive. And I don't mean in lost income. I mean in lost potential. You all know how much I love humans. I got the shirt on repping today. I love humans and I love engineering human potential. However, you have to be willing to maximize your potential and lean into what that can be if you want to stare the mediocrity trap in the face and say, hey, I'm not willing to waste my money on you. You have more control and more agency over your life than you think. All you have to do is choose, design, and do over just dreaming and default. And so my challenge for you this week is to do that. If you've never vocalized what you really want to do to somebody, go find a safe human and do it. I had a client do this with me last week. I've been working with her on building her coaching business for like a year. And she finally said to me, this is what I really want to do. And it was like, I could tell as she said it, it was so vulnerable and so true and felt outlandish, but was completely within the realm of possibilities when we started breaking it down. You never know what's possible until you give it a voice and you take action towards it. So mediocrity is expensive, and I don't want you to spend that money when you could have design over default. What's one thing you can do this week to get one step further to doing towards your dream instead of just thinking about it? I'll see you next week for more No More Mondays.